Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me on the Gift of Need podcast. I'm Jude Trang, author and observer of human need in society. This podcast seeks to address the overlooked power of need and how it shapes our behavior, our relationships, and society. And it's born from the belief that our needs are not burdens, but are opportunities and gifts. And my guest today is Kevin Chandler. I'm very thrilled that he was able to take time out of his busy schedule promoting his book to be with us today. Tommy Shelton is the co-author with Kevin, and he is a pastor of a church and had some important meetings with caring for someone that he needed to be with today. They recently released a book that they co-authored called The Hospitality of Need, How Depending on One Another Helps Us Heal and Grow Together. So can you tell us a little bit about your background, Kevin, and maybe also how you met Tommy? Because I see it looks like he was in originally a different location than where you were.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, Jude. I'm happy to be here. And so I'm 39 years old, and I live in Indiana with my wife, Katie, and we are coming up on our 5-year anniversary, which is really fun.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And I have a disease called spinal muscular atrophy, which basically means that when my brain tries to tell my muscles what to do, it kind of gets messed up along the way. And so my muscles have grown weaker over time, and I've spent my life in a power wheelchair and relying on a lot of people to make my everyday life happen. But, you know, I feel I just feel really blessed that these people, these friends and family that have come around me don't just make my life possible, but they make it worth living. They really fill it with joy and adventure and life, so that they don't just get me up every day because that's what you do. They get me up because I want to get up. I want to live out this life with them. And so Tommy...
That's great, yeah.
And so Tommy has become one of those people over the years. So we actually grew up in the same town in North Carolina and in Winston-Salem. He was a few years older than me. He's actually my older brother's age, and I got to know him through a program that my mom was working with, and like a skit program where they took high schoolers around to middle schools and did skits, and Tommy was part of that, and I was the younger brother that was always around, so I got to know him, and he was the Friday night DJ, or maybe it was Saturday night at the local Christian radio station. He, after everyone was in bed, they let him play the punk rock songs, and I was into that, so I followed that, and we just ran in a lot of the same circles. And when he graduated high school or college, he moved to Florida, to Tampa, and became a pastor there. And I kept following his teaching, like his preaching, and would go down and visit him, and just really appreciated how he handled the Word of God, and his approach to it was just so passionate and respectful, reverent, and so I just kept listening to him. And we also wanted to write a book together. So when I started working on the idea for this book, and I think I was even a few chapters in of telling my own story, that was going to be most of the book, which we'll get more into later. But I was writing parts that were about my own life, and I said, I really want there to be a few chapters in here about how Jesus used his human needs, in the flesh to invite people in. And so I called Tommy and talked with him about it, and I saw him get it, and just get really excited. So so that became our project together. So a lot of the book was written, how many miles apart that is from
Wow.
Indiana to Florida. But then it worked out, I think maybe two or three times we got together in person and kind of rendezvoused somewhere and knocked out a lot of the book. Even just sitting in the same room typing, working on our separate parts, we felt like it worked a lot better when we were together in person.
Together. Yeah. How
So
cool
we
is
did get to
that?
do that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so folks, today we're going to discuss our mutual interest in the needs in our lives and how each of us respond to them and how that affects our individual and corporate healing and growth. Before we delve into the new book, though, we need to hear a bit about what led to Kevin's previous book that was released in 2019 called We Carry Kevan: 6 Friends, 3 Countries, No Wheelchair. Kevin has been featured on CNN and CBS News, TEDx, and multiple magazines and newspaper articles. A review tells us that Kevin is just one of the guys. It's impossible to know him and not become a little more excited about life. He is an inspiring man permeated by joy, unafraid of sorrow, full of vitality and life. His sense of humor is infectious, and so is his story. So, Kevin, tell us what led to this adventure in writing that book.
Well, I grew up in a home where we had to think outside the box when it came to accessibility and living the daily life. My sister also has spinal muscular atrophy, and so there were 2 of us in wheelchairs, and we have an older brother who's really creative. He's a cartoonist and an actor, and my parents are really creative as well. My dad was an airplane mechanic. He's retired now, and so I just grew up in this home that we just kind of looked at what we wanted to do and what our limits kind of capped us at, and said, well, how do we push those limits? How do we think outside the box to do what we really want to do, to live life to the fullest? And that sort of evolved over time as I got older and went out and lived on my own. It moved into my friends taking care of me and traveling with me, did a lot of road trips, and also just being in groups of friends going to concerts, or I was in a band and we went on tour, and so I started experiencing what it looked like for my friends to step into my need and to be part of what I kind of call peer-to-peer caregiving, that they take care of me and I take care of them. I look out for them and how they're doing. And so it's really a reciprocity that's really beautiful. And I've just really enjoyed living that way. So a few years ago, some of those friends that I was doing life with, I reached out to them and said, hey, what if we went to Europe? And a few months before, I should say, it was one of the other guys, it was his idea that we go into the sewers under our hometown, where some of them went to college, and said, well, sewers are not wheelchair accessible, so how are we going to do this? And we came up with a backpack that they could carry me in, and we had an awesome time because we all grew up on Ninja Turtles and Batman, and so that seemed like the right thing to do. And it was awesome. So I called them afterwards, and I said, well, we did that. What if we did that again in Europe above ground for 3 weeks? And so they agreed to it, and we dove into that experiment, that adventure together. We did a fundraiser to get the money to do it, and called the fundraiser We Carry Kevan. It was the idea that it's not just about me, it's about this whole community coming together. And, there were 7 of us on the trip, but the people that helped us do the fundraisers, the people that gave to it, the people that put on benefit concerts and their own little fundraisers, and people that housed us. I mean, if you put all that together, it was thousands of people were on this trip with us, and so so that's where the first book came from, is that I kept a journal on the trip, and when we got home, I decided to write the book, chronicling mainly that 3-week adventure, and so that's kind of where that came from. And so then the new book came out of the question of, well, what else can I share? And I noticed that a lot of conversations around that trip, people would hear about it and say, wow, your friends are so amazing. And they didn't realize that those were 6 of my friends, but there were 30 or 40 more that I wanted to also tell them about and say, yeah, these 6 are amazing. Let me tell you about these other guys too. And so the hospitality of need really came out of a desire to share stories from throughout my life, where I've gotten to see the blessing of friendship through vulnerability and interdependence come to life.
Well, when I think about your life from the very beginning, it has been lived in dependence on others. It's a very different experience from most of us who depend on our parents in an ever decreasing amount, right? Until we're young adults. But even while we're still dependent on our family, I think as Americans, we have this innate conviction that we're self-sufficient and we have agency, the ability to control much of our lives. So your perspective on life would have been different, I would think, necessarily as you grew up.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I didn't even realize it. That was just the life that I was living, and it wasn't until the past few years, and especially going to Europe and people seeing that from the outside and saying, "Hey, this is different, right? Like, what is it?" And then working on this new book really brought about a lot of terminology for things that I was just living in and just enjoying, not realizing that this wasn't the norm.
No. In your new book, do you talk about how our needs are often perceived by others, which is what you're kind of telling me now, and many times even ourselves, but did others perceive them more as burdens? And did you ever feel the sense that you had to, that you were a burden to others and that you felt any sense of shame? How did any of that play out in your life?
Yeah. It definitely does come up quite a bit in the new book, and it comes up in the old book as well, but really more focused in the hospitality of need, because I felt like I needed to give some definitions. I had early on in the book, and one of them was need, and what the premise was, what we were really talking about. And what I've found in my own life, not just observing others, but what I've experienced firsthand with my own needs, is that at times I've struggled with 2 different things, and then I'll go back and explain them. But I have held my need as a burden, as you mentioned, and then on the other hand, I've held it as an idol. I've put it up on a pedestal, and so to break those 2 down, I have at times thankfully, thank the Lord, they were brief times, but I've struggled with feeling like a burden, feeling like, oh, these friends signed up for this as friends, not they didn't sign up for this much, and I talk in the book at one point about if a friend is literally picking me up out of my chair and I feel his arm quiver, under the weight, then my mind can very quickly go from I weigh too much to I am too much. That's just where our hearts and minds go sometimes.
Mm.
And what I've been so thankful for, on top of many things, is that these friends not only step into my need and physically care for me, but if I voice those thoughts, if I voice those feelings, they will counter them. I had a roommate once that I said, this is too much for you guys. I'm too much for you guys. Maybe I should, move into a care facility or something, and it would be easier for all of us. And he was my roommate, and he was picking me up from a coffee shop, and he just kind of looked at me sideways and was like, "Don't say that. Don't. What are you talking about?" And we went home and we made a pizza and watched a movie and moved on. I didn't need a long lecture. I just needed to be kind of smacked around verbally, like knock it off, and so I'm thankful for people to speak into that and exemplify over and over that I'm not a burden, that my needs are not a burden. And on the other end, I said we can often see our needs as an idol. We can put them up on a pedestal. We can, we live, we live in a culture of self-advocacy and self-care, and that's just as bad as self-sufficiency. It's all about me, and we can miss what the bigger picture is and what the greater joy is. We can kind of get into this tunnel vision where it's like, well, I have a need and everyone else their worlds need to revolve around it. And what I've realized, the chapter where we talk most about this in the new book is called A Tightrope Walk, because I feel like there is this straight and narrow fine line road down the middle between those two extremes. And it's to see our needs as tools, to see our needs as you said, opportunities. There's these needs that we have don't have to be a bad thing, burden or idol. They can be just something in our lives that we can say, oh, I can use this to grow closer. I can invite people into this, and we can delve deeper into relationship. And so that's really, and I wish I could say I live on that tightrope all the time, but it's a constant drop off either side, and that's yet another need. We need friends, we need family, loved ones around us who can speak into that in words and actions. We all do, whether you have an extreme disability or something simple or something unseen, or it's a temporary thing. You need help bringing some boxes in,
Right.
And yeah, we need people. We were created to live in community and rely on one another. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And that kind of goes into a question I was going to ask you, are there those who use need in a way that's manipulative or codependent? And how can people discern the difference when dealing with people in our communities? You touched on that a little bit with it from your perspective of, making it an idol. And I know over the years, there have been people that myself and others have tried to help or worked or had some, especially a long-term need. I'm not talking about, help
Sure.
moving or your car broke down or whatever. But there are people that will, I don't know, that just you get to a point that they're in the position of being almost a victim. And do you address that at all in your book, or is that something that you've thought about, or am I off subject?
No, you're right on subject, and I think the answer is to look at yourself or look at the person in need and say, okay, how are they approaching this? And it's kind of it's the difference. For example, this isn't the difference, but it's an example of the difference between asking for help and inviting someone into your need. It's when you are, which sometimes inviting someone in literally verbally means you're asking for help, but it's all about the posture and the approach to inviting people in. So when I invite people into my need, am I making it all about myself? Yeah, but even just internally, I'm just talking about looking at yourself, taking a good hard look at your own heart. When you invite people in, is it all about you? Is it all about paying them back? Is it all about your needs and not theirs? Or are you looking at this in a way of like, oh, I have this need? I mean, for me, it's like, well, I need to use the restroom. Well, that's a need. That's a real need.
That's a real need, yes.
Yeah, I'm not going to deny that, but within that, I can say, cool. So, Tommy, we've been doing a lot of road trips together, touring to promote the book, and so I could say, well, I need to go to the bathroom. So, Tommy, get over here. Let's go use the restroom. Or I can realize, oh, we've been surrounded by a bunch of people. We've been, doing all this work. We get 5 minutes. We get 10 minutes of quiet to like reconnect and touch base. And I can say, how are you doing? While he's, standing there next to me, holding my shoulder while I'm sitting on the toilet. Like, I can say, hey, how you doing, man? Or, have you talked to your wife today or on the road? And things can slow down. I can take that opportunity to serve my friend while they're serving me, because realistically, they're focused on, all their attention is on my needs. They are taking care of my needs. So I don't have to worry about my needs. I don't have to worry about myself. There may be practically, hey, I need you to scoot me over this way, or can you do that differently? But I don't have to worry about myself in that moment. I can put all my attention on him. And my wife and I have talked a lot about how the fact that she helps with my caregiving, that she meets my needs in that way, has done wonders for our marriage, because it kind of slows the world down around us, and it gives us these touch points of conversation and physical touch and communication all throughout every day. I mean, how much of a wonderful blessing is that?
Right.
I'm so thankful for it.
Well, and see, that's it. That's what I hear in your voice and from things that I've read, that you're viewing this person as giving you a gift, not something they owe you. And I think that's what sometimes you find with people, that maybe they feel like, well, it's clear I'm in need and you've got so much more than me, you owe me. And I think that the gratefulness in your heart, it always makes, people much more full of joy to offer a service when they know, again, that you're viewing it as, I have this need. It's just straightforward, and honest. In the book, you write about how our needs can help us heal, mature, and grow together. My question is, do our needs necessarily bring about those results? And if not, why do you think so? Are there people with needs that they don't really turn out, to heal and to become better people? And do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the sad side of it, and I think that's where we see most of our society and culture, which is, and it goes back to what you were just asking about with, manipulation or seeing yourself as a burden. Those two extremes. I mean, our needs have an element of hospitality that can be in them. and really, I would say it is in there. Are we going to pay attention to it or not? Are we gonna lean into that? Are we gonna foster that? Because I mean, that could be said of anything. I remember hearing an author say once that he wrote a story that he loved how it was worded, but it wasn't a good story. It was a bad story because it was a morally bad. It didn't lift people up. It tore people down, and it was just not good. And so he threw it out because he was like, I'm a good writer, but I just wrote something that's not good. We can have our needs can be hospitable, but if we don't handle them that way, if we don't approach them that way, then they may not lead to healing and growth within our family and friends and community. I will say, I think sometimes it happens despite ourselves, because there are days when I'll go back to the guys that get me up in the morning. Some days I'm not awake enough to give them the attention that they really deserve. But the fact that I have asked them to come in and do this and that they have stepped in, it empowers them. It shows them that they are trusted, and they're getting to do something, especially guys, we like to do things, all right? And so even if I'm not at my best, they may still grow and heal through it. Now, in that case, I'm missing out because I'm not participating. That's my loss, But I do think there are situations where too often, because we see our needs as a burden, or we hold them up as an idol, because we are selfish and manipulative, or it's funny because we can either be manipulative or we can be miserable, but both are kind of selfish, right? We're looking at ourselves either way. If we're looking at our need in a selfish manner, then there's a more likelihood that the people that come in to be part of our need are going to be miserable as well.
I think you're right. Well, let's talk. We have a few minutes left here. Let's talk about friendship. The promo for your new book says, ultimately, this is a book about friendship, the kind that God has called us to live in, friendship that goes deep and flourishes, not in spite of our needs, but actually through them. Just give us any thoughts on that.
There's a quote that I reference in the book. It's from the author C.S. Lewis, who wrote The Chronicles of Narnia and many other great things. And he once said, he wrote a book about love, which is kind of fun, about the four loves in the Greek language. And in that, he says that friendship is born at the moment when two people realize that they share something, and they say, "What? You too? I thought that I was the only one." And then he goes on later to say that this commonality can be the shared treasures or burdens. And I think that's so important to remember, because I mean, that all of that is true. And let's look at the first part of it. Our friendships come out of a commonality. It comes out of loving the same movie, or living in the same neighborhood, or going to the same church, or whatever it may be, following the same weird band that nobody else likes, being in the same math class. My best friend that I grew up with, we really became best friends in 9th grade geometry, and it's because we were in geometry together, and so commonality is the glue to friendship. But too often I've heard people with disabilities like mine who say, well, I hire caregivers because I want that to be separate from my time with my friends. And like there's this barrier, and that's an extreme example, but don't we all walk through that in our lives? We struggle with, or we put up these walls and say, well, I have these friends, and yeah, I know they love me, they care about me, but I have to come across as having it all together, or I need to be at my best. And what C.S. Lewis is saying, he's like, no, you're just scratching the surface if your friendship is built on the good things. Like, you need to let people in to your muck and your struggle, your need, because that's where the roots are really going to go down deep. You're going to have more in common. And what I've found is also that when I invite people into my need, they actually kind of adopt it as their own. So that that phrase, that what, you too, it becomes a reality between us, that they share my burdens and they share my treasures and I share theirs. And so that's the beauty of a friendship that is willing to go there.
Yeah. Well, and that's when I think about friendship and I think about the title of your book, The Hospitality of Need. Isn't that what our friendships are about, is the hospitality? The how I got to know my husband was I invited him home to my family's Sunday afternoon Italian dinner, because that's what my mom did for us three girls. I mean, she did it for all of us, but the boyfriends came, and John always says, yes, it was Jude's mom's red sauce that got me there. So,
that's
it is
a commonality.
yeah, and it's that hospitality. I have friends who have told me that I was shocked. They said, we never had anybody over for dinner to our house. And I just thought that's how you lived life, coming from a family that what you did was you invited people to sit around the table. And even though my family was not wealthy at all, and sometimes we shared, a lot of food, and John remembers us, like me, poking food off my brothers and sisters' plates. If we had steak, we'd kind of steal from each other. But anyway, so, well, Kevin, we're out of time here, and we really could continue this conversation, but I want to just thank you so much for making the time. I know you guys have been on the road a lot. I've been following some of your path, and I thank you for talking about how the needs that we each have can become opportunities for others to use their gifts to meet our needs, which then I think creates connection for us as individuals and community and society, which also brings joy and fulfillment for that sense of purpose we all desire. We have a deep need for purpose. So thank you. Thank you for writing the book. Thank you for your website.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on. This has been a joy.
Oh, thank you. You can check out Kevin's work by going to wecarrykevan.org, and I'll put these in the show notes, and also thehospitalityofneed.com, and you can purchase his books on Amazon. So just head over to those websites and check it out. There's great resources for people with disability needs also. So the great music you're hearing was written and performed by Gabe Kubanda at Kubanda Music. You can find him on any streaming service. Please consider following and rating my podcast on Apple or Spotify, and subscribing to my free Substack newsletter. And leave a comment or review. I'd love to hear from you. Bye.